Pre-season is here. Arsenal are on the way to Asia. And of course, this means that we would hope at least to have a striker by now. But that is not the case. And Arsenal have not yet signed their striker. And we're going to discuss all that and more in today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. We're going to do a quick mic check just before we go into this. I've no way of knowing. I've got the AirPods in. I'm currently doing it through the laptop speakers, but I can switch to the AirPods as well just to see which one is better. So we're going to switch now, and you're going to let me know which of these two it just sounds better. That's all you need to do. So now we should be on the AirPods. So let me know which, is it the previous one or is it this one? Just let me know which one was better, and then we'll go with whatever's good. While you're deciding which one's better, we'll go into the chat box just this morning and say good morning to some people. Dexter, good morning to you, to Darren, to Sweat and Merlo, to B-Max, Cole. We've got my beautiful British Isles in the chat box as well. Kirill, Sweat and Merlo, Dara, we've got Evie and Thomas, we've got Maniac and Olawale and Laughing Man, we've got Beans on Toast in the chat box, and Jay, Freddie, Kirill, plenty more of you guys and girls there as well. Thank you, all of you, for listening. Do drop a like on the video. Do indeed as well subscribe. A lot of you are saying the first one was better, so we're going to go back to the first one just for today, and hopefully that'll be better than this. So there you go. This is the first one. So we'll go with the first one for the rest of the show. Of course, tomorrow I'll be back in usual surroundings, back in the studio with the normal microphone, so you won't have to worry about any of this audio rubbish that we're dealing with today. But yes, now we're going to be going through this microphone, and hopefully that will improve things. Right, let's jump to today's stories, shall we? We begin with Arsenal completing a signing. Yesterday, they announced the signing of Demiane Agustien. He joins from Derby. The youth recruitment drive at Arsenal is, of course, continuing. Signing his first professional contract, he turned around and said, I'm just very pleased, obviously playing for a big club. Can't wait to get started and play for Arsenal. I think the way they've got ex-pro footballers here as well, which is something big within the club. Obviously, you've got the likes of Per Mertesacker, who I've spoken with as well, and I know his values. They're very high, and he wants to create a better player, but also a better person, which is a great statement as well. So Arsenal signed another young player. There's a lot of talk amongst kind of the Derby-focused sides of things, which I think at least it shows you, of course, the frustration. It shows you the annoyance. It shows you the irritation in a rival club when they lose a player of real talent. So it seems that Arsenal have landed a really talented young player. I can't say that I know anything about Demiane, but of course we'll be hearing more about him as the season goes on, as he gets underway with the youth team, of course. And Arsenal's youth recruitment drive does not stop there. This is one that is going to be slightly later and will happen further down the line. But according to the Irish Independent, Arsenal are close to agreeing a deal for 16-year-old Viktor Ozhianvuna, who plays for Shamrock Rovers. He's 16 at the moment and won't join Arsenal until he turns 18, according to those reports in Ireland. But the Shamrock Rovers player is very highly rated and is now expected, or rather we are closing in on an expectation that he will be joining Arsenal in the future. As I say, Arsenal look to recruit more young players to their youth ranks to try and bring in some of the most talented young players. Karl Hein, of course, has already joined from St Johnstone, and there's more hope of more young players. We know that Will Wright of Salford City is another young player that the club are looking to try and sign, and they are spending small sums of money on some really talented players from around the UK and Ireland now as well. So really interesting signings being made by the club at that level, but it is, of course, at the more senior level where we want to see those big deals done this summer. And that is going to rely on some outgoings. Now, Ryan Taylor Sport reporting that Karl Hein has had a minor injury, a thumb injury, supposedly, which is one of the reasons why he's not on the tour. But the main reason, to my knowledge, why he's not on the tour is because Arsenal are looking to find a permanent sale for Karl Hein. He is expected to leave the club during this window and on a permanent move somewhere. He spent last season on loan at Real Valladolid in Spain, and the expectation and the hope is that now he will find himself the permanent move and Arsenal can bring in some funds for a player who is, of course, an Estonian first-team international. So that's also something else worth bearing in mind. But yeah, the hope is that Arsenal get a few quid through the door. Now, there were a number of mixed reports around the behind closed doors friendly that took place yesterday. Arsenal, a number of their players took place in a friendly with Watford at the training centre. And there were a number of reports that were kind of swirling around yesterday, different scorelines being reported. My understanding, based upon speaking to a contact of mine, is that Arsenal won this game 2-0, and that was the scoreline. I don't have information as to who scored. I don't have information as to who played. It is a, quote, behind closed doors friendly. And that means information about these games is kept as much secret as feasibly possible. But according to my source, Arsenal won the game not 3-0 like was circulating around social media yesterday, but the score was in fact 2-0. That's what I've been told. That's the information I've been given. So I'm going off of that based upon a trusted source of mine. So if any further information comes out about this, of course, we will let you know as soon as possible. But this is definitely a behind closed doors friendly. So information is always very, very, very difficult to try and get the correct information out. But I trust my source. I trust the person who's given me the information, and I'm told that it was 2-0. But details of anything beyond that right now are a little bit vague because, of course, I think Mikel Arteta is very keen to try and keep as much of those preparations that are behind closed doors behind closed doors. Moving forward, though, the players, after completing that pre-season friendly, did indeed head over to the airport before flying out last night to Singapore, to Asia, to kick off the pre-season tour. An Arsenal squad is made up currently of 30 players in the group. Goalkeepers, David Raya, Kepa Arrizabalaga, Tommy Setford and Alexi Rojas are the four keepers that are on the trip. The defenders, William Saliba, Ben White, Gabriel, Jurriën Timber, Jakub Kiwior. At the moment, Alexander Zinchenko, although, of course, he could yet leave the club. Ricardo Calafiori, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and then two youngsters, Josh Nichols, and you will know very much of Marley Salmon. I've personally interviewed him myself. Really, really solid, grounded fella. Knows a lot for a very, very young footballer and very impressive player as well in terms of how he plays out from the back. A lot of confidence, and to be in that group at that age, 15, he still is, going into next season. Very impressive indeed. Unheard of for a defender of that age to be really considered at this level already. Midfielders, Martin Odegaard, Christian Norgard, Mikel Merino, Sambi Lokonga, of course, who is also being linked with a move away from the club this summer, Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, and another youngster who signed a professional contract this summer, Louis Copley, a really interesting young player, of course, a leader in the group of the youngsters as well, and a player to look out for on this trip. Forwards are Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Leandro Trossard, Ethan Nwaneri, Reece Nelson, who of course is being linked with a move away. Ethan Nwaneri, as well mentioned there, he too has now returned from that extended break he had from being involved in the under-21 European Championship. Kai Havertz, and then some youngsters, Andre Harriman-Anous, Ismail Kabia, and of course, Max Dowman. Interesting that Max Dowman listed here as one of the forward players in the group. Of course, he plays and has played plenty of games in midfield, but it's interesting how he is linked and being spoken here as a potential forward option for Arsenal. And Ethan Nwaneri too, listed as a forward, despite, of course, being seen more so as a central figure, as an 8 or as a 10 in the team going forward as well. Fabio Vieira is not in this group. Reason for that is, of course, he took part in the Club World Cup with Porto, so he is still, of course, away from the team at this point in time on that extended break. If indeed no permanent transfer is yet sorted, he could also join up late with the group as well. Same goes for Noni Madueke, who, of course, is also currently extending, or rather has a extended extra break, because of course he also took part in the Club World Cup. So any players that took part in the Club World Cup, no matter what stage they were involved in or got to in that competition, they have been granted that extended break, so we won't see them involved. But with that squad announced, there were some notable absentees. One, of course, being Cristhian Mosquera, who has also not yet travelled because his transfer from Valencia is not 100% complete. We know it is pretty much all there. All we're really waiting for is the signature and the announcement now on the defender's deal to Arsenal. He can then, of course, join the team slightly later. Will join up and make his potential debut, potentially then against Newcastle rather than Milan. But Mosquera is still very much expected to sign for Arsenal and, of course, join that group on the pre-season tour. But the big name not yet on that list, because he too has not yet signed for Arsenal, is Viktor Gyokeres. The hope was that Arsenal would have sorted out this deal. The hope was within Arsenal that they too would have done this deal by now. They wanted their new striker, whoever that was, to be on the flight to Asia. It was a deadline. It was a point in the summer that they had hoped that a deal would be done, but they are still in talks with Sporting. They are still finalising this transfer. It is a massive deal, and they are dealing with a club that are very, very difficult, of course, to negotiate with. We don't know all the fine details of what is going on. And yet I see constantly on social media or in comment sections or in chat boxes, people who seem to think they know how a negotiation of a multi-million pound transfer happens. I'm sorry to be blunt and break this to you. You don't know. You just don't. I think for this to fall apart based around 2.5 million euros, as some are claiming, is ridiculous. The idea that a transfer that amasses to 73.5 million euros would break down because of 2.5 million euros makes no sense. Believe me, if it does, and we find out that is the reason, there will be hell to pay. We could absolutely have a very harsh, critical conversation about that. But take just a step back and try and just ground yourselves for a second and think really, really hard. Arsenal need a centre forward. They absolutely want to sign Viktor Gyokeres, and a lot of work has been done to agree a fee, we are told, in principle, at 73.5 million euros. The idea that this would break down, or that Arsenal would walk away from a transfer because of 2.5 million euros in difference of a deal of this scale and this importance, to me, would be nuts, maddening, ridiculous, silly, stupid. Any word you like to insert into this situation would be appropriate. It's nuts to think that a deal would collapse and fall apart based on that tiny percentage of the overall deal. So be sensible about this. Be careful who you listen to regarding these topics, because this time a week ago, as we woke up on Sunday morning, there were further reports that this deal was collapsing, that this deal was falling apart, that this deal wasn't going anywhere. Hours later that same day, David Ornstein reports, deal agreed in principle. The price tag has been agreed after the agent waived, of course, his side of the fee, and that only the structure needed to be finalised. That was a week ago today. And the whole concept, the whole context of this transfer changed in a matter of hours. Don't fall into that same trap again. Don't fall for the rage baiting. If and when something actually happens and we find out something has genuinely changed for the worse, we can have that conversation. We can have that talk. We can have that chat. But at this point in time, no. And the fact of the matter is that Arsenal's business this summer, and they have, of course, needed a lot of players in a lot of positions and have dragged their heels in windows gone by. I'm talking years and years and years ago, have not done enough in windows. In this window, Arsenal have managed to get themselves 4 players signed through the door. 2 more of those players to make it 6 signings, being Mosquera and Gyökeres, are at very advanced stages. And should they be able to move on the players they want to move on, they could add an unprecedented 7th signing to their group this summer. And I find the mood and the irritation and the annoyance that I see every single day, and I know that it's my mistake for looking on the cesspool that is X. But even then, the YouTube space, the comment section space is filled with impatient, angry people about this deal. It's a very complicated deal to do. It's a very difficult team to negotiate with. You've got 3 separate parties involved in this transfer, both clubs and the player, and they all have their own desires, reputations, and aims for this transfer. Not only this, but Sporting are starting to get a taste of their own medicine as well. I don't know if you were able to see this story yesterday, reported in the Mirror by Ryan Taylor, but the Almeria chief, Gonçalves, has been speaking to CNN Portugal about their striker, Luis Suarez, not that Luis Suarez, a different one. He plays for, of course, Almeria, and he scored plenty of goals for them, and he is seen as Sporting's #1 replacement for Viktor Gyokeres. Now, the Almeria chief has been speaking to CNN Portugal and says some very interesting things indeed. Luis has had his best season. He's in the best moment of his career. 31 goals is a number any forward wants to achieve. We haven't had any official contact with Sporting to date. We haven't received any formal or informal contact, but we have with other clubs. And we're moving forward with negotiations with other clubs. We're managing our timing. Fair value, he has a €40 million release clause. To paraphrase Frederico Varandas, the Sporting president, for the record, we're not asking for the value of the clause, but we're going to defend our interests. Read that and understand the context of what that means, because it's very, very interesting indeed. And it does give you an indication about how Sporting and Frederico Varandas, the Sporting president, of course, the difficulties that are going on in transfers, the stubbornness, of course, on Sporting side with this deal. It's not just affecting Arsenal. This is a multifaceted scenario, and Arsenal are very much heavily involved. The other thing I want to point out is I find it so mad that some people want to walk away from this transfer now. The idea that some people have said, let's just walk away. Let's go for another target. Let's find a different player to go and sign. It's mad to me, the impatience of some. I think it's probably to do with society in 2025. I think it's something to do with how we are as people in this day and age. Rage quitting, needing things at your fingertips, having something being given to you instantly so often in so much of our lives, that being forced to wait for what is only half so far of this transfer window for Arsenal to complete their 6th potential signing of the summer, and people want to go and start from square one on another player and assume that that's going to happen really, really quickly, and that that's going to happen faster, and that we're going to get a better player as a result. It's mad to me, the behaviour of some during this window about this whole transfer. This deal is, for me, it would be nuts for it to fall apart. It would be crazy for it not to happen. And yeah, it's just nuts how some people have reacted to this. It's nuts. And I've seen some people say things like, oh, this is happening. It's happened to us before. I'm trying to think of another situation where Arsenal were in, where they got to the stage where a fee with a club was agreed for the player, and that they were just in the fine details of working out the last points of that contract, the breakdown of the structure, and it didn't happen. So the PTSD argument, the suggestions that we've not done this type of transfer before, that this has happened before. I'd love to hear the example of where Arsenal got to this stage of a transfer on a player, this stage of the discussions with a player, and it fell apart. I'd love to know what that example is. I really racked my brain yesterday trying to think of it. I can't find an example so far. You'd have to let me know if you can think of one. So let me know. But the idea that Arsenal would walk away from this at this stage, or this deal wouldn't happen at this stage, is still the far more unlikely scenario. It's nuts. I can't quite believe how people are acting. I can believe it, but I can't quite believe it at the same time. It's crazy. Hopefully he's in soon. I really hope Arsenal can finish off this transfer for a number of reasons, of course. But it's starting to be not just a reason to get in the striker that we need, but just to shut up some people because it's getting so boring seeing the head loss, the unnecessary head loss around this transfer. It's crazy. Well, let's go to part two, some questions and more right after this. Right, let's go to part two of today's show. We're going to go into the chat box and tackle some of your questions. Sharif says, hi, Tom, you're right. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it doesn't seem Liverpool's Ekitike deal is almost sealed and moved at a rapid pace and costing more money. Think about that again, Sharif. Think about what the fee is. David Aunsley reporting yesterday that there is a chance that Liverpool may end up paying more than 95 million euros for Hugo Ekitike, a player that only a couple of seasons ago was signed for 17 million euros, and they're now potentially paying upwards of 95 million euros. They're paying massively over the asking price, the market price for Ekitike. He's not a better centre forward than Gyökeres. He's not a better centre forward, in my opinion, than Sesko. He's not a better centre forward than some of the other top major targets on the market right now. But they are paying a huge figure. I was not comfortable paying 90 million euros for Sesko, and I know that the majority of you listening were not either. Not comfortable paying that amount of money for that player. And Sesko is better for me than what Ekitike is. So that's why that deal is progressing quite quickly, is Liverpool are willing to spend, because he's really probably the last signing that they need to do during this window. He's adding that extra forward. They've not needed to have the selling pressure that Arsenal have had. They spent 12 million quid last summer. That was it. They won the league. Their freedom to spend is much bigger than Arsenal's. Arsenal don't just want to sign Gyökeres and be done. They want to sign Gyökeres, and then they want to go into the market later on in the window potentially and add that third attacker that we all want. And that's the other irony, of course, of this deal, is that we're desperate for Arsenal not just to sign Gyökeres. We're desperate for Arsenal to sign their centre-forward and a third. And if this window ends and Arsenal only have two attacking players in this market, I can guarantee you that the overall sense and feeling will be negative. It will be critical. It will be unhappy that Arsenal have only landed two attacking players. Because we know, I know, you know, we need three. We need the Saka competitor, we need the centre-forward, and we need that additional attacking option that potentially offers something on the left-hand side and through the middle, i.e. an Eze, a Xavi Simons, potentially a Rodrigo, or that looks unlikely at this point. And so to do that, we need to get a favourable deal for the other players, hence why Norgard, 12 million quid, Kepa, 5 million quid, Mosquera, 15 million quid or so. Martin Zubimendi, of course, was another expensive signing, but that was because he's a marquee, top-level, world-class potential player that they've added to that group. Big price tag. Lots of guarantees with Zubimendi. Probably the most guarantees of any player that we're adding. Noni Madueke, of course, a player at the club, and Mikel Arteta in particular, I'd really liked to appreciate from his time, not just at Chelsea, but before then. And the market going rate, the going rate of Premier League wingers, they managed to sign him for less than Kudus and less than Alanga and less than potentially what Morgan Gibbs-White will cost, even though that's a release clause. £75 million, £71 million Manchester United are paying for Bryan Mbeumo, who, of course, was Arsenal's number one target for that position, but did not want to be second fiddle to Saka, didn't want the competition, wanted to be a leading guaranteed starter in his respective team. Arsenal couldn't offer him that. Could not offer him that whatsoever. So for that reason, Arsenal are now in a situation with the money that they've spent on 4, potentially 5, we hope 6 signings. They need to get those deals done for the right amount of money in order for them to then be able to move more freely, should they move some more players out this window, for that third attacker that they want to bring in. So for me, I'm not in the camp of just pay the money, because if just paying the money that Sporting want means that we can't operate and go for a third winger, third attacker, third player in that offensive line this summer, then absolutely I understand why Arsenal are being shrewd and stringent in how they're approaching this negotiation with a club, of course, that are proving very challenging to do this deal with. There is that too. And the player, Gyökeres, is doing everything in his power to force a move. Arsenal have got that in their side. They've got a player who they don't have to convince to sign, that is ready to move, that has turned down offers everywhere else. They've got a player there that is doing everything in their power to make that move happen as well. That is also really, really, really important. I talked about the Noni Madueke thing, so no, I haven't ignored anything. As said before, you're not getting a deal for a Premier League level competitive option on our right wing for less than what we have paid. That figure is more than I wanted to pay, more than I personally value him at. But that's the market rate. In fact, it's slightly less than the market rate for that player. It's a risk, but we had to go and find a player for that position. And ultimately, we had to do that under the guise of having already a talismanic right-sided player in Saka. And that's really, really difficult to do. Madueke offers you not just, of course, that right-hand side depth, but he's going to give us, we assume, quality in other positions as well. 35 says, hi, Tom. I'm a regular iTunes listener, but have never listened live. Your show's always great, and you're a great voice of reason amid some loud mouths. Thanks. Keep up the good work. Thanks, mate. That's very much appreciated. Yaya says, this is Sporting making the deal as hard as they can. Gyökeres will be ours, but Sporting are trying to save face. M says, then why not go and shop in Europe for less money? Why spend 52 million for an average player as a backup? Because the answer to this, again, is simple. They don't see the options out there in Europe that are going to be that player. Look at Bakayoko as an example, who's gone to Bayer Leverkusen for, I think, 20 million euros. On paper, sounds great. Sounds like a really good option. And Arsenal could potentially have added him to that group and he would have been understudy. Problem, has no interest in being a number two. Has no interest in being a number two. And for that reason, he doesn't want to sign for a club that he's going to be sitting behind Bukayo Saka. He's also very specialised as a right-wing player, Bakayoko. Doesn't have many games at all on the left, but has the vast majority of his games on the right. Madueke is a player who has played plenty of games, not just on the right, but in other positions as well. Has played 3 years, of course, already in England. And we don't have time for a player, of course, who's going to come in and be a number two, but potentially play in other roles, who has to adapt and transition. So they've gone and got a Premier League ready player instead. So again, it's really simple for me, this one. That's the player they wanted. And the whole argument of like, it means that we can't now sign Rodrigo. Those two things are not linked. The signing of Madueke is not stopping Arsenal from signing Rodrigo, because Arsenal's priority was never to go and sign the Rodrigo. Their priorities were a centre forward and then, of course, adds that player on the right. That was what their priorities were. And they want to add that third attacking player if feasible. The only way a Rodrigo signing would happen is if one of Martinelli or Trossard is sold. That's the only way that would happen. And there are zero guarantees that that happens during this window. And they can't work off the potential chance that that might happen, sign a weak player or a weaker player than what we have done in the other role that we need to sign, and instead then maybe get Rodrigo. Because what happens then if you say, right, we're not going to go and spend the money that it would take to get Madueke. We're not going to go and sign that player at all. We're going to wait. We're going to wait until the last stage of the window, because that's potentially when Rodrigo's there. And we're going to try and sign him. But we're only going to try and sign him if indeed we're able to bring in, or rather sell, one of the two starting left wingers. Because we have two left wingers. Rodrigo's not getting into the team at Real Madrid, and Arsenal aren't going to add, realistically, a third left-wing option when they've already got two. So they would need to move one of those players on. And to move one of those players on, you need a club to come in and pay the money that they are worth. And that so far has not materialised. The Fenerbahce rumours were proven not to be very sustaining in their validity. The Bayern Munich interest kind of came and went, but never led to anything. The Saudi interest that was suggested in Martinelli never materialised, perhaps was never even really there. And so the idea of taking a gamble and risking the potential of adding three forwards this window, astutely, carefully, strategically, and instead gambling all of that, is just not for me. And I can understand completely why we've taken this approach. If we get to the end of the window and Arsenal haven't signed these players, then of course we can have a long, critical, understanding conversation about how that's happened. But we're not at that stage yet. And so therefore we have to have the conversation and the context at this point of the window. Because if we don't do that, then it's pointless. Because you have to have the certain context around things. Martin says, Tom, why don't I see you calling out the club? For what, Martin? What is it you want me to call the club out for here? I'm struggling, Martin, to know what you want me to call the club out for. I've explained the situation rather clearly. I'm really struggling there. Ben says, Madueke, homegrown player, need 8 of them. I mean, Martin, if you want to hop on, feel free. Let me know if you want to hop on and ask me yourself. I'll send you the link. We can have a conversation. You can ask the questions you want to ask me face to face. Feel free. The offer's there. Let me know where I can send you the link, and I'll send you the link and you can hop on and ask me yourself. Ben says, Madueke, homegrown player, need 8 of them in the team. This helps a lot. Also, Arteta has a good history with young talent. I will be optimistic about him that he is also a Gooner. I'm not sure he is a homegrown player, Ben. I don't know if he counts as a homegrown player. So that's a question still. I don't think he does. I don't think he counts as a homegrown player at all. So he's still an important part of this group and an England international, of course, who came highly recommended. You probably saw the piece from Sam Dean yesterday about Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka being very, very keen, of course, to say he is a player that I think would add a lot to this team. And they gave Mikel Arteta their blessing that Madueke, of course, was a very good player to add to this group. So that comes from Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice. So 2 players that are, of course, quite important. Richard says, we're not a serious club. Of course, Arsenal signing as many players as they are before pre-season, but no, we're not. We're not a serious club. John says, he says, for not being serious, get him on. I bet he won't say this argument. This is why I have these off. This is why I put these offers out there. You know, it's all well and good saying, why won't you criticize? Why won't you do this? If you want to ask me the question yourself, face to face, the offer is there. I'll send you the link wherever you need me to send you the link. You can come on. You can ask me yourself. I'm happy to have a conversation. Very calm, like adults, discuss this. You can ask me whatever it is you like. It's very rare these situations, of course, happen. And you've seen a number of times when they do actually happen. I remember when we had a couple of listeners on previously, and it turned out actually that, you know, we could change minds, and minds were, of course, changed as a result. Jamie says, I'm not going to go through that. That's just ridiculous. Let's keep it clean, please, people. Let's go to Elfboy says, no, unfortunately, I checked and Madueke does not count as homegrown. No, I didn't think he did. Richard says, because he left for the Netherlands at the age of 16, Madueke does not count as homegrown in England for the purposes of the Premier League and UEFA squad regulations. Robin says, at this moment in time, I have neither a positive or negative standing on this window. There's still a lot of variables. Absolutely. Martin, I'm offering you the opportunity to ask me the question directly. You said, why can't I answer? I'm offering you the most direct passage to ask me a question. Let me know where I can send you the link to hop on the show, Martin. I'll send it to you. You can hop on and you can ask your question in the most direct way that you possibly could ever wish for. So don't tell me that I'm not going to be upfront. Don't tell me I'm not willing to answer questions. There is the offer to you. Feel free to take it. Azanik says, do you think that Gyökeres deal will get here tomorrow? There could be the honest answer is that the here we go could happen at any moment, because the stage of this deal is at such an advanced point where all we're waiting for is the agreement on the structure, the agreement on the add-ons. We could be an hour away, a day away from that final signing being happening, the final agreement being needed. And that's why I think that the idea that Arsenal would then pull out of this deal at this stage, for people that they're so fed up and so bored and so impatient with this, that they just pull out at this point, it's nuts to me. And if it, you know, as I said before, if it comes out that we're haggling over 2.5 million euros and this deal ends up not happening because of 2.5 million euros, and that's genuinely the reason, then that's awful. That's horrendous. That's unacceptable. And Arsenal shouldn't do that for a position of this importance. I cannot believe for a second that that is the case at this point in time, and that there is a broader context to this conversation. We're only privy to so much information. You're privy to even less, because of obviously what you're able to access online. But even those with their contacts, with their insights, still only have the tip of the iceberg and a little bit under the surface. So we can only go off that information, and we can't come to these mad conclusions at this point. And says, Tom, have you noticed that this Gyökeres announcement came out on a Sunday? So there's a sign there, fingers crossed. It's a shame that he didn't get a flight to the pre-season. If it turns out that this coincidence of Sundays is a thing, the conspiracy theories are going to go crazy, aren't they? They're going to go so mad. So it's nuts to me. It's absolutely nuts to me that we're getting to the point where we're thinking a specific day of the week is when, and if it happens on a Sunday, I mean, the conspiracy theories are going to go even worse. So let's see if this is the day that it happens, and we're sitting here tomorrow morning on the 8 a.m. show talking about yet another Sunday being a massive, massive day. It doesn't seem that Martin's coming on. That's a real shame. But you can't say I didn't try to offer him the avenue to do it. Chris says, to underline how fake some of the reports are, Thomas decided to sit on a cartoon staircase this morning. It does look a bit like that, doesn't it? It does look a bit. It's just a blind, though, Chris. But thank you for your kind donation and your humour. It's very much welcome this morning. Let's scroll down the chat a little bit more. Eddie says, does Madueke reduce Saka's workload? Because Kivior never gets minutes when Gabriel is fit. Would Arteta rotate an even more important player than most? So this is a really important question, Eddie, and a criticism that is completely valid of Mikel Arteta is that he doesn't bring off key players soon enough in games, quick enough. And that's my fear, is that we do these deals, we bring this depth in for these players, and still Arteta doesn't proactively bring those players off soon enough in games. When we're 3, 4, 5-0 up in certain matches, which, to be honest, for a lot of the games last season, we weren't. But the season before that, you'll probably remember the game against Sheffield United when Martinelli got injured. We were 5-0 up at half-time. Martinelli should never have been on the pitch. We've got other players to bring off the bench. We've got youngsters we could have brought off the bench at 5-0 up. Why didn't we do that? And that's something that Arteta needs to focus on. Kivior proved himself last season. He proved that he can be trusted in the biggest of games, on the biggest of stages. Arteta needs to be better there. And I hope that next season with those players, he is better and is able to rotate more effectively. Patrick says, I agree with you, Tom. I actually don't think that Arteta wants a big squad, as illogical as that sounds. I don't think, from my perspective, Patrick, that it's a case of wanting like a squad of 25 starters. I think he would like 20, 22 players that he has to choose from. And within that are some younger options like your Wineries of this world. And that looks to be like the squad that we're building, of course. So there. Martin says he'll come on tomorrow. Martin, it's a date, mate. You can come on the show tomorrow. Not a problem. We'll have a conversation. Reach out to me today on social media, at Tom Canton Media, at tomcanton.bsky.social on Blue Sky. I'm available there. Reach out and we'll get you on the show tomorrow, mate. Not a problem at all. Look forward to seeing you. John says, Tom, do you think Dowman will get some minutes in senior squad next season? I believe over the next few years, he's going to become a huge player. I hope that he gets some minutes and exposure. Certainly the way that Arteta talks about him would make me feel as though that is the case. It would make me get the feeling that Dowman is going to be a part of things. You know, I've said this before. I've asked Arteta questions myself about Ødegaard's role, about the depth in that position, about why Vieira was brought in and we'd never really replaced him when he went on loan. I haven't mentioned Dowman in that question. And in his response to that question, he included Dowman in the answer, which was then picked up on and asked a little bit more on throughout that later press conference towards the end of last season. I think it might have been April time. So he rates him incredibly highly. And if it wasn't for the legislation that was in place, he probably would have played game time last season from the way that Arteta spoke about him. So I am expecting to see it. Absolutely, I'm expecting. Martin says, I'd love to come on. Thank you. Well, get in touch, mate. I look forward to hearing from your message on those platforms, mate. Instagram as well, at the Gooner Talk. You can find me at any of those platforms. So I hope to see your DM before tomorrow morning. Don't skip out on me, mate. Ollie says, I have a feeling that Ødegaard is going to have a one hell of a season. I hope you're right, mate, because we really do need that. We really need it. Roy says, Tom, did you know that there are flights from Stockholm to Singapore with only one stop? So Gyökeres could make it. Maybe he'll do the medical on the plane. I mean, medicals are done abroad during the transfer window. Medicals do happen not just in the place of the club that you're signing for. They happen all over the place. So medicals can absolutely happen out there. It could happen in London, then he moves. It could happen in Stockholm, and then he flies. It could happen anywhere. Medicals can be done very, very malleably these days. Really malleably. Paul says, teams that win the league normally have 16 to 18 core players. We played too many different players because of injuries and because of sendings off. Agreed. And he says, just because you tell me it doesn't mean it's live. I don't know what that's. I think he's responding to someone else. No, you can't. No. You can. You absolutely can do medicals, not just in the country that you're signing the player from. You absolutely can. It's happened a lot. Happens all the time. João Pedro did his in America before signing for Chelsea, for example. Akiki says, for something, I said Chelsea, right? I did. Guys, do you know that history repeats itself? We're going to win the Premier League this season, like the previous years, as how we have been ending season in second, and then we come up as invincibles. I think that obviously links back to the time where Arsenal finished second 3 times in a row and then won the league that 4th season back in the early noughties. So will history repeat itself? Well, let's hope that it does. Let's fingers crossed. Hope that happens. Laughing Man says, any thoughts on Newcastle and United fans' meltdowns in their pre-season games? Yeah, I mean, pre-season means nothing in regards to results. I've said this a number of times before. Pre-season is not a big indicator. It's all about individual games. It's all about individual moments and individual performances and collective performances. Results don't mean loads. So I'm not going to get carried away. Feel free to have a laugh at them at their expense because it's Man United and it's Newcastle. But yeah, I'm not going to get carried away with those results, that's for sure. Elfboy says, I wonder if Saka and Madueke are meant to play together. Saka gets doubled up on all the time and Madueke eats defenders one-on-one. What are you going to do? Double up on both of them? Yeah, I mean, I think having both of them in the team will happen at points this season, and we'll see what that dynamic looks like. But it's much better to have now a more comfortable, understanding player who knows that right-wing role far better than anything else at a senior level that we've had before. So if for whatever reason we need to move Saka out, or he gets injured, or we need to rotate him, we've now got a ready-made player for that position. So that's obviously a very, very positive thing indeed. That is going to bring us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Apologies for the audio change, of course. I hope you can make do with it just for a day. I'll be back in the usual surroundings tomorrow with a friend. So I look forward to that. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. Make sure you go and catch up on my show of Elliot that I did on Friday. And hopefully we have some really good news to talk about tomorrow. Let's see if the Sunday conspiracy theories come true. We are but one step from that deal, of course, being done. We will wait and see what happens. Drop a like before you go. Trying to reach 1K every day as usual. And of course, we'll be releasing some more information, explanations around kind of where we're at with things on football.london a little bit later on today as well. Have a great day, people. Enjoy yourselves. And as always, up the Arsenal.